As a nutritionist and dietitian specialising in weight loss, I've had the opportunity to work with many hundreds, if not thousands of people over the years. I've authored many articles in different magazines and newspapers. I've even been on television and radio many times as well. And over the years, there's also been many hundreds of studies that have looked at thousands of people on all sorts of dietary interventions, all trying to figure out what's the most effective way to lose weight. They've looked at low carb diets, low fat diets, low calorie, very low calorie. They've looked at meal replacement shakes and programs and formulas. They've looked at group sessions. They've looked at dietary interventions where they give you a list of foods to choose from, or ones where they just tell you exactly what to eat. They've looked at dietary counseling, exercise counseling, you name it, they've studied it. And so if you were to put all of those studies all together and combine the results, this is generally what you're going to find. In the first few weeks, low carb tends to come out in front, but after around 2 to 3 months or so, most of them tend to sort of look around the same. Somewhere around the 1 to 2 year mark, most people have started to put most of the weight back on. By the 2 to 4 year mark, most people have put all the weight back on. And then, sadly, if you get to the 5 year mark, what you tend to find is that most people are actually heavier than what they were to begin with. See, to me, and I think most people, the idea of successful weight loss that works is not just something that can help you lose weight for a few months and then put it back on, but something that can help you lose the weight and then keep it off. But the sad reality is that to this day, nothing has been shown to be able to do that. See, all those popular weight loss programs and commercial plans, they show you the before and after photos, but what they don't show you are the after photos, after the people have put all the weight back on again. The reason why none of these dietary programs work when it comes to keeping the weight off long term is because I believe they're essentially looking in the wrong direction. You see, unhealthy eating is not the cause of the problem. Unhealthy eating is merely the consequence of the problem. So what's the cause of the problem? Well, consider this. Even in my experience as a dietitian, the number of people who I've ever encountered who have actually been able to maintain the weight loss for over 5 years, I could count them on one hand. And funnily enough, they all had this one particular trait in common. They all did this one particular thing. And mind you, it had nothing to do with being on a diet. And when they told me this one particular thing, it didn't really click for me at the time, probably because I was still thinking like a dietitian, until the day came for me to have to actually put this stuff into practice for myself. See, being a dietitian, it became easy to become complacent, and eventually I ended up becoming a bit overweight myself. And so when the day came where I had to actually put my own knowledge into practice, I quickly learnt that there's a big difference between knowing something up here and actually being able to put it into practice. And so what I found was that even though I had all the knowledge, okay, I knew what to do, I had all the training, I had the degrees, I knew exactly what to do and what not to do, but despite knowing that, even when I could sort of force myself to do it for a while, I just couldn't seem to stick with it. I even tried seeing a couple of dietitians myself. I said, look, I'm a dietitian, okay, I know what to eat. It's not that I don't know, it's just, it feels like maybe if I get somebody to report back to or somebody to tell me what to do, it might help me kind of stick with it and stay motivated, if that makes sense. And sadly, what the response was essentially was, look, you know, we can only tell you what to do, what to eat. It's up to you to motivate yourself to do it. And that's when I started to realize that there's something wrong with this picture and I really needed to change my way of thinking. So that's when I became really fascinated with this question, which is, why is it that even when we know, even when we're fully aware what to do or what not to do, even when we know full well to do A, B, and C, why is it that we end up just doing X, Y, Z instead? Even when we are fully aware and we have all the knowledge, why do we do that? Here's the thing that gave it away for me though. This was the big clue, okay? And that was in realizing that when everything was going fine for me, when life was on track and everything was fine, that's when I could stick with the diet, no problem. But when things around me weren't going so well and I become really stressed, that's when it become not so easy to stick with it. And that's when I started being kind of almost driven towards those comfort eating behaviors. What I realized was that this is all to do with the mind, especially the part of the mind that controls things that we're not always aware of, what we call the unconscious mind, or some people say subconscious mind. But what I realized was that if the cause of the problem exists in the unconscious mind, then anything that doesn't address the unconscious cause is just going to distract us, lead us around in circles, and bring us back to where we started. And when I say it's all in the mind, I don't just mean it's to do with sort of being lazy or motivated either, because I know plenty of people who are very, very motivated people, highly successful in their career because of their motivation and their strong determination and drive. And yet when it comes to healthy eating, just can't seem to pull themselves in the right direction. They can't seem to stick with it. Whereas I also know plenty of people that are essentially kind of lazy layabouts that don't have any difficulty with healthy eating at all. And see, that tiny percentage of people that have kept the weight off long term, the thing that they told me, and it was different for all of them, but the common denominator among all of them was that they had all experienced some kind of life-changing event. Something had changed in their life. And as a result of that life change, what they described was that they felt different on the inside from that point moving forward. They felt different about themselves. And so from that point moving forward, the way that they described it was that they just didn't feel the same. They didn't feel that same drive to eat for comfort anymore. That thing that had been pulling them towards comfort eating just let go. And so what I realized at that point was that the change needs to occur on the inside so that we can then change what we're doing on the outside. So what I'd like you to understand now is that on the inside, our unconscious mind has these sort of like, think of them as like invisible magnetic forces, okay? And at any given point in time, those magnetic forces are either kind of pulling us towards certain things or they're repelling us away, pushing us away from certain things. And we run into trouble when we start being pulled towards the self-sabotaging behaviors, okay? The things that are unhealthy or unhelpful, whilst being pushed away from the things that would actually be in our best interest to do. And so there's only so long that we can keep forcing ourselves to try and push against that magnetic repulsion, to try and stay motivated, before eventually what happens is our unconscious mind essentially becomes exhausted. And when that happens, it's like trying to push a boulder uphill. Eventually, when we become exhausted, it just falls back down because gravity's naturally pushing it that way. So unless you learn how to reprogram your unconscious mind, you know, what's going on at the inside, essentially it's just going to be like paddling upstream against the current. You can only stick with it so long before the current's just going to take you back to where you started. So what I discovered was a few really simple tricks to be able to learn how to reprogram what's going on the inside of the unconscious level. Because when you can reprogram yourself unconsciously, essentially you get to decide which habits you like to magnetically be pulled towards and which habits you like to be pushed against. So that way it's basically like sitting back and just going with the flow. Your mind will take you in the direction automatically without having to struggle, without even having to try. Even making this video today for me was a little bit of a struggle because I kept procrastinating by doing exercise. I had to keep kind of pulling myself away from doing exercise, whereas previously in the past, you know, doing physical activity was something that I had to sort of almost force myself into doing. So look, if being able to reprogram and change and have control over the things that you're either pulled towards or pushed away from, if that sounds like something that you'd like to learn how to do, then what I've done is I've actually put together an ebook detailing step by step the process of how to actually reprogram yourself on the inside at the unconscious level. And of course, you can use these techniques to do more than just change your diet and exercise patterns. You can use them in any area of life where you want to change your habits. So around this time that I was learning these strategies, it wasn't just my health that was suffering. I mean, I was struggling financially, emotionally. My life was a bit of a mess. I was a bit all over the place. But when I learned how to reprogram the unconscious mind, it changed everything. I mean, now I've grown a company that's employed several hundred people across Australia. My life is remarkably different because I've learned these techniques to reprogram what's happening on the inside, that as a result gets to change what happens on the outside. So look, whether it's weight loss or any other area of life, whether you want to reprogram your dietary habits, your exercise habits, your career, study, business habits, any area of life that you want to change on the inside, this ebook will give you step-by-step the instructions to understand how to go about facilitating that change, so you no longer have to keep struggling, but instead can kind of change the position of those internal magnets to actually pull you towards the changes that you've been looking for. So look, whether you prefer to download the PDF ebook version, or if you prefer listening over reading, you can always download the audio version. But either way, what you're about to learn will change the way that you look at everything you've ever done, and it will change the way you look at everything you're about to do as well. So with that in mind, sit back, relax, get comfortable, and enjoy the ride. Talk to you soon.